Hey there guys, this is Flamzeron, aka YouTube's Tasuke, and I'm going to talk about that, Tales game that came out a few months ago, Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition. Yeah, I've kind of been sitting on it for a little bit. I haven't finished it, hence the title being my thoughts or first impressions or whatever I end up calling it, but since I've already talked about Tales of Vesperia in full in my final thought video way back when, which by the way, I will have a link to that in the description if you do want to see what I think about the game in full detail, at least back when the 360 version came out, because keep in mind that's from I think 2008, 2009. Also, if you want to hear a group discussion, we did talk about the game on my podcast, at least as much as we could have, having only played the 360 version. I think one of us might have had a little bit of experience with the PS3 version, I don't remember, but it was a group discussion on my podcast, so I'll have a link in the description to that episode. I'll have to see if it'll be a direct link or not, or if it'll be just like a form link like I've been doing. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and talk about this little game that's been out for a while. It kind of fell on the back burner a little bit because Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, and then Sekiro came out, and then Mortal Kombat 11, which is going to be the next review, came out, and just a bunch of other stuff. So I played it a little bit, mainly just to kind of bide me some time and give me something to play while waiting for Kingdom Hearts 3. And now that I finished both that and Mortal Kombat 11, kind of got some time until the next big game comes out. So I've been working on that a little bit. And admittedly, before I knew I was going to do this kind of video, not a full review, but I wanted to wait until I at least got Patty, which, as you can see, I do have Patty in my party. She kind of comes and goes, I've noticed. So hopefully she doesn't dip out in the middle of the recording, because obviously I'm going to be playing or recording my actual I'm not just going to kind of mess around. I'm just going to be playing the game, as you can tell. But also, if you couldn't already tell, I did get the PS4 version. For those interested, it is for PS4, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, and Steam. So this is kind of a big deal, I think, because it's literally on everything available in the current market right now. And also, if you are thinking well, I don't have any of those, but I have a 360, you could play the 360 version. You'll be out of a fair amount of content, or not a fair amount, but you'll be out of some new content. But if you want to, you can play that one. But yeah, I got the PS4 version. No particular reason. I mean, obviously, I don't have an Xbox One. My laptop could maybe run it, and obviously I have a Switch, but I wanted to sort of that, I think I kind of wanted to have that simulated PS3 experience. Although I have the PS3 version, I think it's the best of version, sort of like the Japanese equivalent to the greatest hits. But anyway, I'm kind of derailing a little bit. So yeah, as you can see, I'm at the part where you head back to Nordopolica after Yuri does Evil Deed number 2. I won't spoil it, just in case any of you out there are currently playing through the game, which I'm sure they're still. I know it's been out for a while, but I mean, these games kind of take a while. I remember the first time I went through it, it took me a month, but I was just playing it non-stop. I've been really playing this in Symphonia Chronicles, so Tales is kind of on my mind right now, but obviously, you can probably tell I've been enjoying it, considering I'm a Tales fanboy. That and Dragon Ball are my two favorite things. But I've actually been kind of enjoying it a lot. As you can hear, I'm playing it with the English dub. I think in my news video talking about the reveal, I might have said I was going to switch it to the Japanese version just to have a different experience. Mainly, I feel like that was sort of like Symphonia Chronicles carryover syndrome, or whatever you can call it, because I'm playing Symphonia Chronicles with the Japanese voiceover, so I can have the voice skits. But of course, in Vesperia, the skits are dubbed in English, so you can with voices and everything. So I didn't really have to worry about that, and so I just decided to kind of stick with the English dub. Though I did notice it's modern. It's like what they've been doing with the current Tales games, where when you start up the game you have to pick your language. One thing I took note of is that the Japanese language option is the default, which I find very interesting. Now, that being said, going into this game, what we've been kind of having to or this particular version, a little bit of controversy, a teensy bit. So I can kind of understand why they maybe would have made that call to switch it to the Japanese version. Not even just on the grounds of like, oh well, experience the original version as intended by the creators. You know, one of those kind of things. Be like, you know, I guess if it's like if you're watching Dragon Ball Z subbed for the first time, you know, or whatever, for like the special edition, kind of like the Dragon Box is how the default's the Japanese. But that being said, the English version, Ring a Bell, of the theme song called Ring a Bell, is available. It doesn't switch to the Japanese version after waiting like the Xbox 360 version. That kind of makes sense, though, because with the language options, you know, you want to probably hear the Japanese version when you're playing the Japanese voiceover version. So if you switch to the Japanese version, or if you set to the Japanese version, or you know, whatever the proper term is, it'll play the I think it's called Kage ni Naru. I think it's called. I don't remember. Both are sung by Bonnie Pink. So it's pretty cool. I noticed that there are a lot of instances of my PS4 trying to block out recording of the gameplay. It says like gameplay recording block because of the scene. Like the opening is one of those, which is something I've noticed in Jump Force, but I'll maybe talk about that later. Yeah, I've got a bunch of games on the back burner, but I imagine that's probably just exclusive to the PS4 version. I don't know how the Xbox One handles restricted scenes, because it's obviously for the whole streaming thing, and the Switch doesn't have streaming, built-in streaming. I don't think you can record gameplay and take screenshots, which I've been taking a lot of. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you actually see the little icon in the top where it's like, oh, I want to take a screenshot of that. I've taken a lot of screenshots of different things. Maybe it's because, you know, might come in handy like for a blog or something. Though obviously, since this is a console game, I can actually record gameplay footage using my Elgato. So, in terms of this game, because obviously I'm not going to review the game as if like it's my first time playing it, so I'm only going to touch on specific things. So again, if you want to know what I think about the game just on its own, like the content of the game, rather than what's different in this version, again, my final thought video from like 2008, 2009 will be in the description, as is my podcast if you want to hear a slightly more up, because I think we recorded that in like, what, 2012 maybe? Because we started our Tales series review series thing kind of late in, or not late, but like later in the podcast game. Not we hadn't reached episode 100 yet, I don't think, but obviously we're caught up on that front. Though anyway, to get back on point, in terms of stuff that's different, since that's what I'm going to be focusing on, or not stuff that's different, but like you know what I mean. I'm going to be basically talking more about what's changed, how they've improved things, and all that stuff. Which, for the PS4 version, the entire game runs at 60 frames per second, which is pretty cool. It runs pretty smoothly. It basically runs pretty much the same as I remember from the 360 version. The main difference I mainly noticed was in like outside of battle, because I know that's sort of how the Tales series kind of did the whole 60 frame for the most part. I think Symphonia was probably the first one to be completely 60 frames, and then obviously for like Abyss and for like Abyss onward, for a lot of the time it was 30 frames outside of battle, but 60 frames in battle. Here it's 60 frames throughout. I think it might also be 60 frames throughout, and probably maybe Zestiria for the PS4, and probably Berseria, I think. I'd have to count. I don't really know. But the game runs well and also looks good. Unlike Symphonia Chronicles, and this is more of a hindsight thing. I don't think I mentioned this in my video talking about Symphonia Chronicles, but as I've been playing it, because I've actually been playing that along with Vesperia Definitive Edition, and it looks kind of unpolished in certain areas. I was just playing it earlier tonight, and I'm like, well, it doesn't look that bad, but it does kind of feel like they probably should have done a little bit more extra care or given extra care to making it real polished looking, I guess. Not terrible, but with here with the Vesperia, you know, since the game was already in HD, it's more of like an upscale. I don't know if I could necessarily tell. I think if I were to do side by side, I'd be able to tell, but it looks great. You know, it's really pleasant on the eyes. It doesn't really look too outdated. If anything, it just looks stylized, in my opinion. But looks sharp and looks nice and all that. Audio, that's sort of a hit or miss kind of thing. I've kind of noticed here, though. That kind of goes into the controversy a little bit, which I guess I'll go ahead and get to, because obviously this game, or this version rather, includes the content from the PS3 version in English for the first time, at least officially, and so they translated it and all that, and they also had to dub all the extra content, including extra cutscenes, because that seems to be one thing that makes this different than Symphonia Chronicles in regards to changes from the GameCube to the PS2 version to the PS3 version. With Tales of Vesperia on the PS3, it seemed like they added some scenes here and there and added character dialogue and whatnot, and so they had to get the cast to come back and do some extra lines, and they went the extra mile here, I would argue, over Symphonia Chronicles, because with Symphonia Chronicles, you know, they really only did like the arts and then the mystic arts and then the sound test arts. So, like, you know, everything but the skits, you know, the thing I actually wanted them to do. Here they did the arts, like any new arts, any new scenes, and any new mystic arts. I think for Rita, since it's in Indignation, they probably just carried that over. Yuri's, I'm pretty sure they retranslated. I know we were thinking it was that Brilliant Phoenix move, but here we're calling it, I think they call it Heavenly Blade Wing and whatnot. And Twin Wave, which is Yuri and Flynn's double Mystic Art or dual Mystic Art or whatever. That's been dubbed and whatnot. And also, any new skits that have come in have been dubbed. So controversy aside, I feel like this is already a step above Symphonia Chronicles, just on the grounds that we actually got at least a full extra dub. That being said, the quality of the new recorded lines kind of comes into play, because one, this game is 10 years old, so like these actors, for Yuri's voice actor in particular, Troy Baker, and you know, that's sort of a, obviously this doesn't really apply to him given what happened, but you know, Troy Baker in particular, he's really, for the sake of the story, Troy Baker, he's really gone on to do a lot of great voice work, really prolific in the industry now. Michelle Ruff, you know, she's doing her thing, but like everyone's kind of gone on to do different things, seemingly. Some of them I don't think I've heard in a long time. I think like some of them, like you could still hear them and other stuff. Like I think, in fact, I saw I think it was Detective Pikachu, and I saw Michelle Ruff had actually did a voice in Detective Pikachu, so that's pretty cool. Though that being said, basically it's been a long ass time since these actors have recorded these roles. And as far as I can tell, most of them came back. Joe J. Thomas doing Raven, you can kind of hear a difference a little bit, especially just in the quality of the recording, because it sounds a lot nicer. It also sounds a lot quieter, I've noticed, but not always. I've noticed that there have been a few times where it's been the new recording, but the volume has matched the volume has matched the, or at least parts of the volume have matched the regular volume of the game. Of course, I think in that situation it was sort of when they were mixing old and new audio, because they did get mostly everyone back. I know Judith is kind of up in the air. I would argue that Judith is back. It's just that, because I've been listening to her, I think her actress came back. It's just that I don't know if she just kind of, if she maybe retired from voice work or something, or maybe this particular voice was kind of difficult for her to do, but to me, you can kind of tell that it's the same actress. She just sounds pretty different. Like she's talking, like the voice she's doing is different. So that's my opinion. I think she just sounds a little different, but it's the same chick. Same with Carol. You can kind of tell it's the same chick, but I don't know. she's trying to kind of match her old voice as much as possible. I imagine they probably had samples, or they should have had samples. Sam Riegel as Flynn sounds pretty much on point. Michelle Ruff as Rita sounds on point as well. Patty, I believe, is voiced by Sandy Fox. She's obviously the new chick. In Japanese, it was Chiwa Saito who did her voice. Here it's Sandy Fox. I could have sworn she was in a Tales game. I don't remember. I might be getting confused with Tara Sands, who was Genus in Dawn of the New World, as well as Radiant One. But yeah, so the big boy though, Yuri, he's kind of the one we need to talk about, because they didn't get Troy Baker back. Instead, they got a different guy, and it seems to be, I think, general consensus seems to be that it's Grant George, and it does sound a heck of a lot like Grant George. Which is funny, because I remember when that first English dub trailer for Vesperia came out back in the day, and I heard Yuri's voice. To me, it sounded like Grant George. I might try to find that trailer and see if I can, hear it. Because I remember it sounded a lot like Grant George. And I remember I thought it was Grant George, and I told people, oh, that's Grant George. And I was like, oh, that's really cool that they got Grant George to be in a Tales game. But ended up being Troy Baker, who did great as Yuri. Though for all the new scenes, it's seemingly Grant George. There was one instance where it sounded like someone else, maybe even Joe J. Thomas was filling in. And I was wondering if maybe it was actually David Vincent doing it instead of Grant George. I don't think that. I think it's Grant George. It sounds a lot like Grant George. Like, especially if you played Soul Calibur 6 and you listened to Keelik, who is played by Grant George, you can kind of hear the similarities. So, and I know there have already been videos comparing the two. The only one I've seen is one that was speaking more positively about it. And frankly, I don't think it's... I mean, it's crummy that they didn't get Troy Baker back. I can kind of understand why, just because of how prolific of a voice actor he is. I imagined he was going to be really expensive. And also, I think Grant George actually does a pretty good job. And this is kind of thinking in sort of like a, long run, best case scenario kind of thing. But like, one of my issues that I had with kind of shifting gears a little bit, Tales of Exilia, Alvin, voiced by Matt Mercer, it sounded very Yuri-esque to me. And so I feel like, well, if we ever get another Tales game where the two are another crossover where you can have both Alvin and Yuri in your party, they're going to sound similar. I guess you can... I mean, you'll run into that problem kind of with characters like Marta and Sharia, who are voiced by the same actress, or Duke and Malik, if Duke happens to be in the game. But like, I feel like Grant George may be a better call in some instances. I don't think his performance is as nuanced as Troy Baker, because I honestly, listening to it, if it was a situation to where they were gonna get Grant George, but they decided last minute to cast Troy Baker, I can kind of see why they would do that, because Grant George, while he does a good voice for Yuri, it sounds very sort of like calm and kind of subtle. It doesn't really sound like it has much depth to it, and when he does try to give it a little bit more depth, you can kind of, his sort of like natural voice kind of comes out a little bit, I think. Like he almost kind of comes out of it, I think. And I feel like Troy Baker does a good job of keeping that same kind of like tone, but being able to emote more. I do like Grant George's performance though. And in the event that we get another Tales spinoff or some Tales anime thing, or like a Rate Mythology anime, or some other thing where they put Yuri Lowell back in as a character. I almost said Yuri Lowenthal, but no, that's a voice actor. That's not a character. If they were to get Grant George again, I would not necessarily be against it. I actually kind of like his portrayal as Yuri, and kind of like Brian Beacock with Lloyd. I imagine it may get better over time should he return. I saw on Twitter Troy Baker expressed some disappointment, and he said he would have been more than happy to come back and do this role, which I think is actually a really good thing. this was sort of a big role for him, I think. Kind of what pushed him to, big stardom. I'm noticing that with a lot of like the Tales leads, like Bryce Papenbrook with Asbel. After Asbel and Graces, he really like rose to superstardom kind of, and Robbie Damon seems to be doing that as well with his stuff. He was Saray in Tales of Vesperia, and now he's Spider-Man, so in the cartoon at least. Christina V seems to be doing good as well. That's the fruits of that. I mean, she was kind of already established anyway, so I'm not too sure. But basically, seems to be doing the Tales series seems to be doing a lot of good for some of these voice actors. So I imagine they may see these roles in like a sort of like a gratuitous light. So I imagine if Namco were to be all like, hey, we're gonna do a spin-off, or hey, we're doing a remake, or hey, we're doing a re-release like this, do you want to come back? I imagine they'd be all for it. That's sort of where I was going. I know this is sort of like a real rambly video, but yeah, that's kind of where I stand on the whole voiceover controversy. I do think the volume is kind of an issue, because there's been plenty of times where it sounds too quiet. Like so I think so far the only new art of Yuri's that I have is that Concealed Wave. It's like I'll do Azure Edge, he's all like, Azure Edge! And then like when he'll do Concealed Wave, he'll be all like, Concealed Wave! Like you could probably, or you actually probably could. I am looking at the Wave 4. I didn't, let me try it again. Concealed Wave! Yeah, that's probably quieter. Of course, I'm kind of hunched over, so my VO smithing's probably not good enough. But, so, yeah, like, I think the volume is kind of an issue. Though, again, like, there are instances where it sounds like they actually get the audio levels right, and again, I think it was primarily because they were mixing new and old audio, so they probably had to. At the same time, I'm pretty sure I remember there being a skit where it was all new, but they had the audio at a good level. And I remember there was a patch where they were all like, hey, we're going to address some of the sound issues, and seemingly only for the Switch version. So I don't know, maybe they're taking some more time with the PS4 version. I don't know if Sony has like some weird audio codec or something. But though, let's see. Everything else seems to be running fine. Game looks good. In terms of like the costumes, like the special costumes that we didn't get, obviously because we didn't get the PS3 version. They just straight up give you all the costumes, like including the movie ones that Yuri, Flynn, and Estelle get, where it's their for Yuri and Flynn at least, it's their costumes, or it's their outfits from the first Strike movie, which I'm actually tempted to watch, because all this Tales talk's putting me in a Tales mood, and also the school uniform costumes, the cameo costumes. It kind of looks like we might have gotten. I don't quote me on this. I might have to go into my PS3 and look. But we got like some really cool costumes, like Yuri got sort of like a Jill looking, like Tower of Jiraga looking costume. I don't know if that's from the PS3 version or if that's something they made for this game. I don't know. I think it would be cool if they added in like some original costume, and I think they probably should have. I don't know why they didn't. Just some extra stuff, and that's one thing I'll give Symphonia Chronicles over this. Dub skits or not, we at least had some like original costumes there, with like the Tales cameo costumes. I think that was actually really cool, especially since they had quotes from the other Tales games, and it kind of put sort of like the tone of Symphonia into perspective, because I feel like the diction in that game is very sort of like rigid, formal, and religious. So hearing sort of like the more loose kind of dialogue that you would hear in other Tales games, I find to be very interesting. Whereas here, like they gave you all the cool costumes, at least, like friggin' the school uniform costumes. They give you all that, which is I remember when I was playing the PS3 version, I actually got a Japanese PSN yen card, and I got the costume. I got Flynn's Luke costume, and then Estelle's school uniform costume, and now I just got all that for free. Oh, and I should also note that for the Tales of the Abyss cameo costumes for Yuri, Flynn, and Estelle, it's the recolor versions where their hair color actually matches the other characters. So like Yuri and Flynn, I almost said Reed. Yuri and Flynn have the red hair, and then that Luke and Ash had, and then Estelle has the like dull brown hair that Tyr had. So I think that's pretty cool. I don't know if a lot of people know that like when those costumes first came out, they actually were uncolored. Like it was still like their costume, but like, you know, Yuri still has dark hair and Flynn still has blonde hair, which is why I really like the costumes now, because it gives Flynn the red hair. And so if you want to kind of pretend like, oh, I hacked Ash into my game, oh gee, I hope the party doesn't split up, because then that's going to give me Luke again, and then when I Game Shark Ash into my party, he's going to be back at like level fucking 3 or whatever bullshit level he was at before, because the game seems to only register when they're actually legitimately in the party. I'm a little salty. Dude, another video project that involved a lot of hacking with Tales of the Abyss. But anyway, so they give you all the costumes you would want, and in terms of DLC, like they still have like the you know, easy costumes DLC that you can do. So I need to look up a guide on how to get all the costumes I want, because I never got the Schwan costume. Oh, they also took away the ability to rename the characters, which is weird because they kept the Japanese button layout. So like instead of X being your normal attack and circle being your arts, it was reversed, like how it is in the Japanese versions of the Tales games, and how it was on the 360 version. So I switched that immediately to just because that's kind of what I'm used to. I'll only play that when I have to. I'm almost low-key used to it just because of all the Tales games I've had to import, but I like my X being my attack button and my circle being my art button. I'm even kind of playing Yuri a little bit differently too. It's mainly because of what I have access to, but I've been using Wolf Strike, I think it's called. I've been using that as my side instead of Tiger Blade. Obviously, you get Tiger Blade much later. I kind of like Fang Strike though, or not Fang Strike, Wolf Strike, because it goes forward like that. I don't like the knockdown though, because I'm thinking like what I try to do is use that and then chain into Dragon Swarm, which I'm sure you've probably seen by now. And as you can see, it doesn't really work that well because the enemy's been knocked down. So I need to find another move to kind of like be my go forward move, because that's what I like to do for my side arts. I like a move that goes forward a little bit, be it like Tiger Blade where it goes up and then goes down, or Rending Fist where it slightly goes forward, or Whirlwind Assault, or that move that Luger and Mila had in Tales of Exilia and Tales of Exilia 2, where like they go forward and it's like it's like of course in that game you can chain all of your arts together, so like having to mix base and arcane arts and whatnot doesn't really apply here. Which playing this, I don't know if I've just been playing other RPGs for so long and like other types of games where I've had to really only manage myself, or it's been more a matter of just upgrading rather than buying new equipment. But at first I had a kind of a hard time getting into the groove of buying my team equipment. I do the whole hand-me-downs thing. Like I did that with Estelle recently, actually. When I got the Whirlwind Rapier, the rapier that you get on the way out of the cave, heading back to Nordopolica, I gave Estelle the sword that Yuri was using. I'm like, oh, well, it kind of takes down your defense a little bit, but, you know, here. I'm trying to be real careful with the skills and the weapons thing, because for those who don't know, the way skills work in this game is that it's tied to the weapon, and if you equip a different weapon, you lose it. Though if you use that weapon long enough, you can learn that ability and you can keep it regardless of what weapon you're using. This also includes your Mystic Arts, and so for my entire playthrough, I didn't have all the Mystic Arts. I only had like a handful of them, and it wasn't until before Exilia came out, they're like, you know, I want to try and like tie up all the loose ends of the other Tales games. So I went through and I was playing Vesperia on the 360. This was back then. I'm like, wait a second, I don't have all the Mystic Arts. And so I tried to get everyone's Mystic Arts, and I got everyone's. I already had, like, I had Yuri's. I think I had Raven's. Pretty sure I had Rita's, and I had Rapide's. So I had to get Judith, and I think even Carol. But I couldn't get Estelle's because I sold her fucking weapon that gives it to you, and it's a special weapon that you can only get in a dungeon, so you can't get it anymore. And I don't want to Game Shark it. No, I don't want to do that. I kind of wish there was a buyback option. You know, kind of like how MMO, it's like you can buy stuff back, or in like Elder Scrolls, if you sell something and you're all like, well, I actually want that back, and then like you immediately buy the back, you can do that. It's like, man. So I lost out on that. This time I'm going to try and do better. I'm going to make sure everyone has their Mystic Arts. Any weapon that I get that doesn't get taken away from me, because I know Dane Nomos, or the fake Dane Nomos that Yuri gets, spoilers, gets taken away after a while. Either that or it breaks, I don't remember. I think it gets taken away. I'm going to try to master it, because I think that has some pretty cool moves you can use, I think. I think it's called Gale or whatever, or Gale Force. Or what, that one skill that's been in a bunch of Tales games where you can just where you get like a fucking 6-hit combo, or like an unlimited combo. I might not use that, but I think you get it from there. I don't remember. I'll look into it. But I want to make sure I get, you know, obviously the skill that makes it to where you can extend Savage Wolf Fury for a little bit. That's always really cool. So I'm going to try really hard to make sure I get everyone's skills that I want. I'm not going to go out of my way to look up all the skills that I have from the 360 version, but as long as I have like all the essentials, like I'm basically like going through each weapon and making sure all the characters like learn those skills. Like Rita's actually behind on a couple weapons, or like I think like one. So she's been using a weaker weapon because, one, I wanted her to learn the other skills, and I don't use her that much, and I forgot when she did. So when she used, so like, oh, she had already learned this. I'm like, oh, well, I actually got to probably give her the other move, or the other weapon. So I'm trying to do that. Patty's been kind of interesting. I wasn't too familiar with her, because the only time I really got to use her was in the demo of the PS3 version, which I played, which I need to re-download. Because her portrait face on the menu screen looks fucking weird. I don't know if I just don't remember what she looks like, but I don't. It looks kind of like, it looks a little too redrawn, like as in like, or like too newly drawn. I don't know. Like I might take a look at the PS3 demo and see how that looks, because I remember that looking a lot different. So we'll see. But yeah, trying to think of what else. Like, so I've got her on my party right now. Obviously, she's been kind of interesting. She seems to play well. Her personality is kind of funny. I like how she has sort of like how she's like all lovey-dovey with Yuri. And I remember the first time I got her, I'm like, oh, sweet a loli. I thought it was pretty funny. I think I took a screenshot of like Yuri like picking up or like holding Patty, and it's like, yeah, loli, all right. That being said, since this is my second playthrough, and I think it's because it's my second second playthrough of the game, I'm noticing body language things with the characters that I didn't pick up on before, which I'm like, oh, that's them kind of hinting of something, or that's them like when Yuri, I think there was one where like Yuri went off while these people were telling telling everyone like, oh, this bad shit's happening to us, and like Yuri kind of walked off because what he was gonna do was do something about it. Or like that part where like he tripped that guy in the city when you meet Flynn for the first time in the game. Like actually like when Yuri and Flynn meet up in that little alleyway, and he's all like, I'm gonna fight you now, like, what are you doing, man? That area where he trips the guy, and I'm just thinking like, you know, when I first saw that, I bet I was like, oh, what a dick move. I'm like, but I'm just like, oh, he did that deliberately to get their attention and to initiate some sort of conversation on how he can help. Like as crummy as it was, that's why he did it. I mean, it's kind of a Yuri thing to do. I've noticed he doesn't really do well with showing his emotions and shit. But let's see what else. Finally got a chance to play as Flynn because along with Patty, Flynn actually joins the party permanently, which I remember that was something that really bugged me about the original. I wanted Flynn to be a member of the team. And he's my favorite character, to be honest. Like, I just think he looks cool, and I think Yuri is funnier. Like, the scene where they break into Rita's house, and it's all like, hey, we're coming in. It's like, Yuri, what about the door? It's like, oh yeah, Carol knocked down your door. Sorry about that. That was really funny. So, yeah, Flynn, I don't know. Like, when he came into that one section where you get to play as him for a little bit, and he's got his old costume before he gets the new one, he played kind of weird. I don't know. I don't really like the way he played. I don't know. I think it was also because I didn't have all the arts that he gets. Obviously, he apparently doesn't get that many extra arts. His art pool is kind of simple. That's kind of what he's there for. Kind of like in Tales of the Abyss, where Luke is sort of like the swordsman that has like a whole, with the exception of like a couple moves, because he's got Demon Fist and Sonic Thrust and all that, and Light Spear Blast rather, or no, Light Spear Cannon actually. Yeah, he gets Light Spear Cannon, where most of his moves are kind of original, but then like you've got Guy who's sort of like the traditionalist with like the Demon Fangs and the Tempests and the Sword Rains and the Tiger Blades, and of course he's got his own stuff like Final Cross, Moonlight Tempest, Void Tempest, Crescent Fang, or whatever, that one where he kind of goes up like that. I don't remember what it's called. But that's sort of the same case here with Yuri and Flynn. Yuri, he's got some moves that are pretty standard. Obviously, he's kind of the part of the New Age crew using Azure Edge instead of Demon Fang. But then you've got Flynn, who's got Demon Fang and Tiger Blade and Sonic Thrust and Beast, Sword Rain, all that. I think both have Dragon Swarm. I think Flynn even uses it differently. I know they have Final Gale. I think they both get Final Gale. I am 75% sure that Flynn also gets Dragon Swarm. I'm sure there's going to be someone in the comments being like, no, you're wrong. He doesn't get Dragon Swarm. He has Beast, though, which is going to be exactly how that comment goes. You're going to be all like, oh, yeah, he has Beast. So I know he has fucking Beast, and I'm probably going to give him Beast as well. I'm definitely going to use him as like my main. I know that you could hack him into your party in the 360 version, and I tried that. It's like with the hex editor thing. I could never get it to work. Like, I could get it to where everything would like save properly, and I could edit the hex data and whatnot, but the save data would never load properly. I don't know if it's just because I was using a unmodded Xbox 360, which is weird because I could load up a save data with Flynn already in there, and I didn't want to do that. It's like, well, no, I want to have actual Flynn on my actual team, on my actual file, and now I can do that. And of course, I'm gonna have to try to make sure I get all of his stuff too. I don't know who I'm gonna give Last Spencer to, because I originally gave it to Yuri, but I might give it to Flynn. I don't know. Depends on what they get. Because I remember in Destiny 2, I think in my first playthrough I gave Kyle the Last Fencer, but then for my second playthrough I gave Judas the Last Fencer, or vice versa. I'd have to look again. I know I want to get Judas's arena weapon. I need to get back on that, but I'm below the 60 level range, which is sort of where I like to be in post Tales games. Right now, I think in this game I'm at like 30 or like 20 something. In Symphonia Chronicles I'm at like 31, so, or at least Lloyd is. So yeah, overall so far it's been a pleasant trip down memory lane. My only real issues is sort of like the audio stuff. I think that's kind of a problem with like the audio balancing, and I do think it was kind of crummy that they seemingly didn't even bother to get Troy Baker back, because I remember during the Symphonia, during the Dawn of the New World stuff, I remember the original cast being like, we didn't even get asked to come in. Like, I remember I emailed Tara Strong about it. It's like, they didn't even ask me. Like, well, shit. Of course, she's pretty prolific in the cartoon world, so I don't know. But that's sort of what made Symphonia kind of cool, I think, was that it was sort of like a primarily cartoon voice actors. Like, Crispin Freeman was, I think, so far the only one in that cast at the time who had done anime. So he probably had more of an ear for this thing. Obviously, Scott Minvale went on to do a Resonance of Fate and is doing Teen Titans Go right now, and he also was in Fuller House, which I think is his premiere role, and other stuff. And of course, Colette's voice actress, Heather Hogan, she's doing Amy in Soul Calibur 6, and so that's been like a nice little treat. And just other stuff. I could go on about other characters and whatnot. Whereas with Vesperia, let me think. I'm pretty sure it was mostly anime voice actors. Obviously, I think Julianne Taylor, who was Carol, I think she had done cartoon. Either that or she's more of a. I'd have to look. Though obviously, yeah, any of the new characters, I think it's just like, or any of like the newly recorded NPC lines. I think like it's mostly Kyle Hebert, and I'm almost getting like a Berserk vibe. How like Sean Schemmel, the voice of Goku from Dragon Ball, who's also Gaston in Berserk, voiced like every NPC or like every like minor character in Berserk, in both the anime and the movies. I don't think he's in the new anime because that's like a completely new cast. But here with Vesperia or whatever, it seems like Kyle Hebert is like voicing every fucking character. There was even one instance where like it was a new scene and he was voicing this one character, or no, it was either he was voicing the character or someone else was voicing the character, and then Yuri leaves, and then it goes back to like a scene. It goes into a scene from the 360 game, and the voice switches. I've noticed that a couple of times. I've noticed that with a Jaeger's alternate ego, Reggae. It's happened a couple of times, I think, where like his voice, it was either him or someone else, where the voice was different. And I noticed that Bryce Papenbrook is playing the heir to the throne. I don't remember his name, the blonde kid, who's sort of like in line to the throne in opposition to Estelle. I don't remember if that was the case back then. It's been so long since I've played the game. I don't remember I was able to recognize what some of the new scenes were, or most of the new scenes, just because obviously I can tell the difference between Grant George and Troy Baker. But most of the other stuff I can't really tell because the audio mixing. Besides the skits, the audio mixing is actually pretty decent in terms of how it sounds. Volume aside, like in terms of the quality, because I remember that was sort of a concern with Symphonia Chronicles. Not only was it quiet, but it also sounded like newer audio, and I think that was actually kind of part of the problem. To where like the original almost sounded like they were recording on like real radio-y mics or real podcasty mics. Whereas I suppose they might have been doing it in like a home studio. I'm not sure. Because I know for Symphonia, Cup of Tea was just like they did the recording. So I'm wondering if it was just ISDN then. I'm not sure. But that's neither here or there. That's a different subject entirely. So yeah, the voices thing kind of crummy. I kind of understand why it happened. If Troy Baker ever comes back as Yuri in a future game, I think that would be fantastic. If it's Grant George, I'm okay with that too. Hopefully in another patch they'll balance out the audio, because I feel like if they just balance out stuff, it'll be better. I don't even care if it's like, well, we're trying to hide it. Like, well, fix it. Yeah, I'm going to keep playing this for a while. I know I need to finish Jump Force, and I got Fate Extell Link, and obviously Sekiro. I never did finish Spyro Reignited Trilogy, but that's sort of like a play it when I feel like it kind of thing. I'm not necessarily trying to finished that. And of course, Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission came out. Like a bunch of freaking games. I restarted Oblivion on my PC because I had a file that I made. It's like, well, this is going to be what if I play the game knowing what I know now and not cheat or do like the console commands like I was doing on my other PC file where I just kind of mess around. Like in this one, I'm actually trying to play the game properly like I did for the first time on the PS3. But again, that's neither here or there. I'm enjoying this game. I'm going to keep playing it for a while. I might kind of take a break now that I've done this video. And kind of go back to a game I've been trying to finish. Like, Where's Orochi 4? That's another game I'm trying to finish. It was like a fucking video game podcast now. I'm kind of rambling a little bit. Though with the Tales games, that usually happens. I tend to ramble a lot. But I hope I've made my points clear. Overall, game seems to run better and look better. Or at least look as good, rather. And I say run better, but it's not like the 360 version ran poorly. Like it works well, it runs well, looks good. For the most part, it sounds good. Any new translation stuff seems fine. I don't feel like it's out of tone and out of spirit of the old translation. Seems to work fine with me. I feel like, you know, I imagine they might have got the same translator or the same script adaptator to kind of make sure everything kind of matched properly. So it seems pretty good. I'm having a pretty fun time playing it. I'm going to try and do some of the stuff that I wasn't able to do in my original playthrough, like the cameo fights in the arena I wasn't able to do. The extra dungeon where you can fight all the bosses again and then you go in to fight Kratos. Wasn't able to do that. Getting the Schwan costume for Raven. I wasn't able to do that. I want to try and do as much of the stuff as I can that I wasn't able to do, because I remember like this game's side quest cutoff points are really rigid. Like I almost felt like I was missing something. So hopefully I can, unless maybe I'm just dumb and I'm all like, oh well, I didn't actually miss it. It's just like everyone kept telling me I missed it. But we'll see. You know, obviously I'm not going to do a full review of the game and if I do a full review, it's gonna probably be on my blog, where it's more like a sort of like what I was doing for Xenoverse 2, where it's like a second opinion kind of thing. I guess that's where the screenshots will come in handy. But then I'll be linking both my previous video review of the final thought video of Vesperia on 360 and this video as well. So it'll be like, just in case you guys need to catch up the speed, you need to watch like 2 hours worth of videos. But yeah, I'm having fun with it again. It's nice to play a more classic Tales game after coming from Berseria. Kind of had that same thing with Heartsar, which I still need to make that video. I know it's been like years since, but you know, it's kind of nice to play sort of like a classic Tales game again and kind of get back to the swing of things. And you know, I'm enjoying it. You know, I might switch to the Japanese voices maybe at the end of the game. I don't know. I don't even care at this point. Because like I said, like besides the volume, I'm mostly okay with the new voice work. Like I think honestly, if they just fix the volume, I'll be fine. Like put a filter on it if you have to, like a high pass. It's either a high pass or a low pass filter. I think it's like some weird like, you know, bass for the background noise in a way. You can kind of hear the bass increase in the voices, but you know it's leveled in a way to where like it doesn't really sound like super bassy, like, you know, like car stereo or whatever. But yeah, overall seems to be a good improvement on the original in areas where it didn't really need to be improved, but it's still cool. Sound for the most part's okay, though again, volume and kind of sucks what happened to Troy Baker. But again, I understand it, and I think Grant George does an okay job as well. So yeah, if you've never played Tales of Vesperia, you should definitely give this a try, and I'm going to keep playing this for a while. So yeah. Alrighty, this is Flames Are On, aka YouTube's Tasuke.